Hello everyone, my name is Bansi and today I have with me Hannes Robier, who is the chair and organizer of the World Usability Congress and the CEO of Youspi UX design agency for over 14 years. Thank you for joining me today, Hannes.
You're welcome. It's an honor for me to be here.
The feeling is mutual. Hannes, can we begin where you can share your journey, your career journey so far with our audience before we deep dive into our discussion?
Of course. It's a long time ago. I started in 2000, where I studied information design. And only one small part of the study were usability, not UX, usability. And in the first session, in the first hour, I saw that this topic will be my future topic. And then also in the first 3 years of studies, we don't have that much of usability, not UX, usability. But I started to work at Siemens in Munich in the UX part of Siemens, the global UX part, yeah. And this was in 2003 where my UX career really started. And there it's funny, but I designed a mobile apps for Siemens handys, but right now there are no Siemens handys on the market.
I remember those days.
The really old handys, but our smartphones, no smartphones, handys, yeah. And then I went into a research company because in Austria there was UX was not that famous and popular. So in research it was. And in 2007 I started my own company and also started with my first event. And after 13 years, it increased to this World Usability Congress as it is right now. And it's great, but right now I can develop a lot of different courses. I teach at different universities. The UX topic is really increasing. Right now we are also discussing between CX, UX, design leaders. But at the end, it's everything the same. We want to design for the human, and human-centered design is what we are doing. Doesn't matter which name we give it, we do human-centered design. That's the most important thing.
Well, that's beautiful. That's beautifully put, and that's quite a journey. I remember reading that World Usability Congress started in 2017 with just 30 attendees, and look what you have at your hands now. You must be proud.
I'm proud. It's awesome, yeah. But for that, you really have to be consistent. You have to be efficient, and you have to be satisfy your attendees. So at the end, it's organizing a usability congress. You have to be authentic, then efficient, effective, and with satisfaction. That's defined in the ISO norm as usability. So we do what I do.
Absolutely. Now, you said 13 years of owning and managing your design agency, right, in Europe. Can you tell us something about that?
It was really, really hard in 2007. And it took me really 5 years that it started in Austria to grow. In the first 5 years, we only were two, me and my partner. My partner left after 5 years. But honestly speaking, UX and usability, because I talk a lot with my students, with other people, UX and usability in the German-speaking countries are really also 5 years behind the typical global development of UX. So companies need more information about that. So this is why I'm still working on it. And I hope that also in the German-speaking countries, it will grow much faster. But right now, I also see that it really increases really fast. Nevertheless, after 5 years, let's start in that way. I never will start again my own company with the same circumstances, with the same requirements at the end, because I had no network, I had no customers, I had nothing. I only had the idea to do usability and UX. And after 5 years, I really had the network that it starts, that also projects will come, and I had the trust in people that they will give us projects, and then it grows every year.
Right,
and,
right.
At the end, I left the other two companies I worked before in Austria because I saw we can do it better, and you have to follow your way to do the best, to do human-centered design. And since then, it's the way it is. It increases every year, and the quality is higher and higher every year. So,
right, yeah, no, I totally relate to what you said. It is hard.
Since now, also today, I have to convince people every day.
Interesting that you mentioned this. I do wanted to ask you this. In my experience, the term stakeholder means different things to different people based on whom you are asking. And I do want to ask you that, who are the stakeholders for you and your company?
When I'm working in a project, everyone is a stakeholder who can be influence the project. In any kind. So every user, every not user, but have an influence on the project. Maybe every future company or insurance group which supports such a project. Every, I will say, the husband or the wife of the CEO can influence the CEO. So also they are stakeholders. If we know that they are whispering some insights, also friends of project managers can be stakeholders, if we know that. So everyone who can influence a project is a stakeholder in our point of view.
Interesting. And for these stakeholders, often design is not an obvious solution. They don't see it as a must-have, but more often than not, it's good to have. How do you manage to get the stakeholder buy-in for investment in user experience?
That's a long process.
It is.
But at the end, you have to convince them to checking their needs, what they really need, what are their pains. And when you're talking with business, you have to work out all these business needs. When you're talking with a CEO, maybe it's an organizational need to be faster, to be whatever. If you're talking with a project manager or scrum master, you have to talk with him in the team management need area. Right. So you have to talk with everyone with their needs. And that's often not what UX people see. UX people often want to design and create something, but 80% of our work is to communicate with other people to convince him for the right thing. At the end, for me, UX is innovation. And innovation is combining the end user, the technology, and the business. We are, of course, we are responsible for the end user because we learn how a user behaves, what's the psychology behind. And we also talk to users with user testing, user research, and so on. But at the end, our job is to communicate between technology, business, and user. That's our job.
Right, right. And you are so right when you say that 80% of UX is actually selling the idea, pitching the idea, making sure that everyone is on board and they buy into the idea, because without that, no matter how beautiful user experience we create or design, they are not going to be either budgeted or they are not going to be implemented.
And honestly speaking, in some projects, it's not that easy as an agency every time, but in some projects, we are the project leader because we do the whole work for the real project leader because they don't know how to do that. So we do everything and they are really happy because everything is running smooth, everything is running good, because we do all the stakeholder mapping for them.
Correct.
And we prepare the information for the right people in the right way. So at the end, in my point of view, the best thing would be that every project manager will be a UX guy in companies.
Right.
That would be perfect. So every project manager out there, you should study or learn UX.
Right, right. Well, for the most part, the users for any enterprise applications aren't the buyers. They are the ones who get affected by the poor usability issues, suffer from frustration and burnout, and can't do much other than raise tickets that take months to be resolved. In cases like these, how to manage user needs with business needs?
That's at the end. At the end, you have to convince the business people, the business guys. At the end, these are two different stakeholders. At the end,
right.
We have to talk with the real user that he can work more efficient, and if he can work more efficient, he can work more to do his task more often or faster, whatever.
Right.
And then we can tell the business guys, hey, your people are more efficient and more productive. On the other hand, we have to convince the business guys in a different way. Maybe in that way we say, hey, your people will be more productive, you're faster, it's everything good for the whole company. But we have to talk to the user differently, and we have to talk to the business people. And to convince them, it's at the end with the business need. Of course, the user is not who will buy in business to business, and it's really often also in business to consumer products, a child is not the buyer, it's the parents are the buyer. So also you have to prepare everything for parents and for the children.
Right.
So it's, if you understand it once, it's really easy.
True that. I think empathizing for UX designers, they go really beyond, and it's not limited to just users. It is like empathize with all stakeholders and speak with them in the language and in using the things that matter to them, using the language that they understand.
Yeah, and it's going in different ways. So, for example, when we have to do research, we have to prepare 1, 2, or 3 presentations on the same research for different levels.
Right.
When I create an offer for a company, I also create it in 2 ways. The management offer, really short and the most important thing, and then a detailed offer.
Right.
For the project manager. So it's also for different stakeholders, the same offer.
Correct.
But the CEO never will read a 20-page offer. He will see everything on 1 page.
Correct.
And you have to think about these stakeholders, or in the best case, you don't have to think about. You have to talk upfront with your contact persons. Who are the stakeholders who will look at the offer or who will be part in this project? Or in the best case, you do I will asking questions is the most important skill as a UX designer.
Right.
And asking question at the beginning of the project, I also ask a lot of different questions. And one of these questions are, who are the stakeholders? And if they can't ask that question, we have to do a stakeholder workshop. And it's better to do it with 2 people. And best is if you do really a good big stakeholder mapping workshop.
Right.
Of course, it depends on the size of a project. It's a really small project, or it's a really huge project. But and the more you know, it's better a project will go.
Absolutely, right? So stakeholder mapping, setting the expectation, and understanding who owns what part, and then speaking to them in the language that they understand. I couldn't agree more.
I often have to say something what Klaus Hofer, a speaker, said to me. He said, if you don't love people, you are wrong in this job. As a UX designer, you have to love people.
Right. Well, now many designers and product owners get overwhelmed by the number of management requirements they have to keep up with, along with being an advocate for the user. In your opinion and in your experience, what is the most important thing to remember for product owners?
At the end, you want, as a product owner, you want to sell your product, and if you want to sell your product, you have to know your user, or you have to know the person who will buy the product.
Right.
So at the end, user experience and do the stakeholder mapping is the most important thing. You don't, at the end, you are not the user, only creating a lot of different, whatever, features, a lot of organizational things. It's not important. You have to create for the user. Then you also can sell it.
Right.
That's the small magic behind user experience, behind every product. If you know the needs, if you know what people need, if you know how to create and what to create, and if it matches with the end user and of course with the business goals, you are the champ.
Absolutely, yes. And it is, so much of it is also about making sure that the UX practitioners and product owners are on the same page, and that we show them the business value of user experience so that they in turn can manage the requirements, constantly coming requirements, sometimes reasonable, sometimes maybe not, from management all the time.
Yeah. So at the end, it's also really important for product manager. This is why I said project manager, product management, it would be the best if they are UX people. It's really important that this product manager also communicates the business goals,
right?
Not only the technology goals. Because if you know the business goals, you know where to go.
Right.
And this is what I see really often, that the team don't know the business goals, don't know the objectives of a project, the clear objectives,
right?
Or they don't have any objectives. They have a task and they will do that.
Right. So bringing that perspective, right, can really align everyone and the entire effort. Yep.
It's communication between A and B.
True that.
The hardest in our world, communication between two people.
Yes.
And as you said, it starts with one word. You understand stakeholder mapping differently than me. I understand UX differently. I'm convinced we understand the same, but you can't say, or you can't think that everyone you're talking to have the same meaning of a word than you have, because you have much more experience behind.
Mm-hmm.
you have much more influences on your definition of a word. And this is really important at the beginning of every project to, hey, this is what we mean with wireframe, mock-up. What's the difference? Typically,
Right.
product managers don't know the difference between wireframe and mock-ups.
Right. Right. So, can you talk about the difference in cultures that you might have observed at the companies that prioritize design and understand the real value of it versus the ones that struggle? What are some of the key traits or key characteristics in culture and thinking that you observed between these two set of companies?
At the end, yeah, it's easy if a company understands the culture of design.
Mm-hmm.
Projects are running good because everything understand is open to new methodologies, is open to design workshops. They bring in their own opinions. They bring in everything, and it's much easier. But at the end, we also have to convince them. But they are open to it because the culture is really open.
Right.
On the other hand, if there is not this, I would say, traditional companies, you have to fight every day, 12 hours a day, and you have to fight with the same person 3 or 4 times. That you can do what you think it's right.
Right.
And this is typically, and it's really normal. Every company has to start, is in a different stage, and they have to develop themselves. And at the end, design, UX design, human-centered design, because I often hear that a company right now, they are still in the digital transformation, the reorganization of the company. They reorganize everything, but they don't reorganize for human-centered design. I don't know what they do, but also these huge consultancies reorganize in a way that it's not mentioned, or the people inside of the company are not developed. They develop the structure, but not the people. But we have to develop the people and not the structure. If you develop the people, the structure will change afterwards.
Right.
Because the people want to change. If you only change the structure, no one will do change. And you have these borders every time. And
right.
so design to bring this design into a company is a change management process for a company. And
right.
it takes 5 to 10 years, and maybe more than 10 years. That design is really a strategy of a company. Of course, it depends on the CEO if he will manage it, or if it is from up to down, or from bottom up or up to down.
Right.
There are really different kind of influences for such company structures. But at the end, it's a change management process, and you have to restructure the company.
Yes, I can totally relate to it. In my experience, I have seen that companies where leadership puts the user first and they adapt to user first approach and they make that a priority, the change comes much faster and easy versus when it's bottom up. I mean, yes, when it's bottom up, you can start to see some fragmented efforts here and there where people and small teams and individuals will get excited. They'll apply it in whatever capacity they have. But when it's top to bottom, the change comes in a much, much powerful way. And you are right. for a company to adapt user experience in a way where everyone thinks about the customer or the user first, it requires that mindset change, right? And not just organizational structure change.
And I'm convinced it's only possible bottom from top to down, because I work with 2 companies where they say UX is important and they have 2 or 3 UX designers in a huge company. It's only bottom up, but now after 10 years, they're still the same people in this company. They're still doing everything to get more designers in, but they don't get the chance, they don't get the money for it, and so on and so on. So the manager don't realize it's important. At the end, they are only designers and make things a little bit better.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, you can really see if they really mean it by how much budget, how much investment that the UX team is getting, what influence they have in the organization, right? Really, do they get a say in strategic conversations, strategic decisions, or it's more like everything is decided and then there is just applying the design to whatever has been designed in a very small capacity?
Yeah. And because you said that design is a thinking, yes, 100% is a thinking. And this is why there are some other developments right now who say UX will disappear in the future. And I think maybe they are right, because also Scrum Master, also Project Manager have the same thinking. And you don't need this UX manager anymore, because they are UX manager and project manager. Maybe they are UX manager who are also project manager or also innovation manager. And at the end, you have the designer, you have the project manager, you have the manager, and they all have this thinking of design.
Right.
And you don't need this special UX manager.
Well, that would be the world to look forward to. Well, lastly, in our conversation, Hannes, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the top tips that you can share with our audience on surviving and managing the stakeholders?
The top tip is at every beginning of every project, ask for the stakeholders. Do a small stakeholder mapping on your own. If you're not allowed to do a workshop, do it on your own. And ask your responsible to say, hey, these are the stakeholders, please give me a okay for it. Right. That I can work with the stakeholders. Because at the end, the stakeholder map can really have a really huge impact also on who will be your first user for a user test, who can be your expert users, which you can ask for, who can be beta user when you're really in a late stage of your prototype, and so on and so on. And at the end, you have to get the okay from everyone who have huge influence. Right. That is not happening that someone at the end will come into a presentation and say everything is bad because. And I have another story. It also really influenced me my whole life and also my working. We did user testing for also a huge company, and they also get a new CEO from a huge consultancy. And also at the end, we presented the usability testing for one target group, and as we know, 5 to 7 users are okay for user testing. Right. For each target group, not for all target groups, for each target group. And this CEO his experience was to prove everything with thousands of people, that he can say, okay, that's okay. And he said, hey, 7 people, we can't go out with a product when you test only with 7 people. Did bad work at the end because you don't understand user experience and usability. Of course, you can prove it with 1,000 people when you do a market research, but usability is inside research and not market research.
Right.
And after that, we also had to rework everything to rework the presentation to prove what we did and that everything what we did is okay. But it was again an additional work of 1 or 2 weeks only for him.
Right.
In the next project for this company, we did everything right, and we also proved it with a lot of people that he said, okay, everything is fine.
I have been
and
in a similar
there were some
situation.
methodologies too. Yeah.
I have been in a similar situation, Hannes, where we present the data which is absolutely based on the qualitative analysis and research. And when the business side of people who are always used to seeing and thinking in numbers, the moment they see it, they start asking questions from quantitative perspective, everything falls apart, and it takes a while to gather yourself and kind of align, correct them, and then say that what we have done, it's still valuable. It's just that you need a different perspective to look at.
Yeah. And to convince people that qualitative research, insight research has at the end more impact than quantitative research. But for that, we also can talk hours, and there are also a lot of studies on that. Why is that better and why is that better?
Right.
You can Google for it, but it's really important that you also have in mind these arguments, how to convince people.
Right.
And the fine thing or the good thing is, as long as you're working in this area, as more arguments you have, as better you can convince people, as better you can answer questions if they're asking something.
Right, absolutely. This was a very interesting discussion, Hannes. I'm glad that we were able to do it. Now, I understand that you are a busy person, and I'm very happy that you were able to take out the time for chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. It's
Thank
a really
you so
important
much.
topic, and we have to share all this knowledge.
Absolutely. And in fact, thank you for joining, and I actually look forward to hosting you again whenever I have another interesting idea in mind.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm open to it.
Excellent.
Thank you.